welcome to this edition of Diaspora Central with Gil Ingles. With me today, I have someone who is responsible for branding your business. He is responsible for ensuring that your image out there in the digital world, your image out there before your clients and anyone that is interested in you is the positive image that you want to broadcast. Her name is Rahel Getachew, and she is with Abrabrand. Rahel, welcome to Diaspora Central.
Oh, thank you for having me, Gil.
Indeed. Always a pleasure to have someone who's responsible for making people famous. So I'm going to take this opportunity to shoot my shot. Hopefully you will make me famous.
I hope so too.
Yeah, right.
Definitely. I know you have all the criteria to be famous.
So thank you very much.
Your brand is good. I have checked you out.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Listen, to me, it is just a pleasure to have someone like you in a program such as this. And as always, I want to say something. I always feel excited when I'm doing anything that represents the Horn of Africa, because after all, that is the home of the African Union. So I always feel like anytime I'm representing Ethiopia, I'm representing something that has to do with the African Union. So welcome to Diaspora Central.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I, like you, I feel like I always represent the entire continent. I'm a Pan-Africanist, and work across the continent. So it does... It does make me feel good to hear that.
Indeed, that is very good. So let's get into the nitty gritty now. Rahel, what city were you born, and tell us a little bit very briefly on your transition from Africa to the U.S.
Well, born in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. Because my father was a diplomat, we traveled around on the continent and then ended up in Canada. From Canada, again, my parents shuttled me back and forth between the US and Canada. So eventually, after extensive professional work overseas, I came to establish myself in the US with my family.
Oh.
And so since it's been, I would say 20 plus years. So I won't say the number, but it's been quite some time.
You don't want to reveal your age, huh?
Exactly.
No, it is okay, because if in case you know, now the new 40s are supposed to be the new 13s, right?
Yes.
The new 50s are supposed to be the new 20s. So It doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you feel young, lively, and you're still doing lively things like you are, because in all honesty, you seem pretty engaged, and especially in the business world. So you have had an experience, I guess, of being in different countries, so that gave you a sense of understanding of the globalization prior to globalization being a phenomenon.
Absolutely. And when I was in university, my thesis was how globalization affects sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh, right.
And so back 20 years ago when I wrote it, I already knew what was going to happen.
Okay.
And so in Africa being the last frontier.
Right.
And then in 2009, you had the McKinsey & Co. and other organizations, institutions writing about the fact that Africa is the emerging market, and then it's the last frontier and so on. So I already knew. And we just need, as the African continent and African countries respectively, had to change their image and their narrative in order to integrate in the global economy.
Right, and change images is definitely one of the things that you do, and you do well. So now, one of the challenges, if you can talk to us about some of the challenges that you at times encounter when attempting to change the image of the continent of companies or institutions that represent the company, what has it been? One of the greatest challenges?
Well, it depends when you refer to challenges. Challenges in terms of securing the client for the African countries, it's often enough that they don't see themselves as engaged or necessary for them to sell themselves or to do marketing for themselves or promote their countries. Right. I mean, the US is one of the major countries that promotes continuously through soft diplomacy and hard diplomacy.
Right.
Soft diplomacy meaning, such as the cinemas, the films and so on, and sports and so on. And so African countries have to do similarly. Right. I think one of the wonderful countries that I haven't had the privilege to work for, but however has done a great job is Rwanda, for instance.
Okay,
Rwanda is definitely doing a country branding that is exemplary.
Right.
Of course, there's ways to refine it, but again, so that would be the challenge for African countries.
Okay.
For companies, so go ahead.
No, my question was going to be, so basically to summarize, you believe that they still need a bit of awareness to what branding can actually do to them.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we've been doing that. Again, we've been privileged, and I really mean privileged to have had the opportunity to meet also presidents and prime ministers, ministers, and so on, and having the dialogue about the importance of branding, really the importance of changing their image, their narrative, and how it can be done in a multi-layered fashion.
Yes,
and that doing it also in phases. It doesn't have to be done all at once, but it could be done in phases and strategically in a cost-effective manner, and at the same time by training a generation of Africans that are there working either in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Trade and so on and so forth, to know how to sell the country. Right. So when they are overseas, be it in the US, Canada, Europe, and so on and so forth, they know what messaging means,
right,
how to message it, how to present themselves, how to sell the country, not just in terms of the quote unquote the salesman thing,
right,
but really how to do diplomacy through selling.
Got it.
Selling through diplomacy, as they say.
Got it. And that is for government institutions or for state institutions. Now talk to us about the private end. That's where you were going.
Yes, indeed. So the private sector, in a sense that the challenge is often enough because of the market trends. So your consumers, right? So you have tiers of consumers. So if you're talking about the small businesses, minority-owned businesses that are usually operating at really in an agile manner, and they have very little budget for marketing,
right,
they are a little bit harder to kind of say, well, you need to be measuring. So you need to capture data, right, in order for you to actually be more efficient. The larger corporations, in terms of what we focus on, is really the corporate social responsibility, the CSR aspect of it, because again, it goes back to through CSR, they do a lot of branding. So be it in terms of the climate affairs, in terms of green initiatives, in terms of community impact, diversity and inclusion. So all of those things fall under the corporate social responsibility / marketing.
Right.
And so in that space, I wouldn't say it's a challenge. We haven't, it's not a challenge per se, but I think they need to do it a little bit more in a measurable manner and in an impact-driven way.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take a very quick break and go into a few images of some of the events that your organization has actually had, and some of the things that you can definitely showcase to kind of illustrate some of the topics that you have just gone over. So for those of you that are still with us, you are watching Diaspora Central with Gil Ingles, and our guest today is Rahel Getachew. Until then, let's take about 2 and 2. We'll be right back. Welcome to Diaspora Central. Be sure to catch us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Every week, a new program just for you. Stay tuned. And we are back. If you have just joined us, you are listening and watching Diaspora Central with Gil Ingles, and my guest today is someone that you definitely need to know if you are a business owner or even if you are simply a private citizen that is trying to portray a specific image to the rest of the world. This lady is responsible for branding. She's responsible for the image that you and your business showcases to the rest of the world. Rahel, let's get back into the conversation.
Yes.
As an African from the diaspora, understanding the need for branding and being able to break that down to African countries and even to Africans in the diaspora, because after all, we are the guys who believe that know and understand everything, right? So having an expert that actually does that sometimes becomes a little bit tough. But you have been able to successfully do that. Mm-hmm. If you had to tell something to any diasporan business owner and pitch your services in approximately, let's say, 30 seconds to a minute, what would you say to them?
21st century requires you to be a brand. And the best way to sell yourself is to know yourself. And branding allows you to know how to tell your story, how to share your narrative, how to consistently and constantly do messaging, but in a subtle way so it can penetrate in the consumer mind.
No, that's a great pitch. I tell you, you got me already as a client. You are going to do my PR. Now, one more question, and now I want to get a little bit behind the scenes. As a woman, as a female in that field, which is primarily male, is historically being male dominated, how difficult or how easy is it been for you to maneuver it?
Oh, we can do a whole show on that.
Yeah.
Because clearly, it's interesting, to say the least. It's quite interesting because, like you said, it's a male-dominated space, and then it's also we don't see people like me in the space, right? And there are not a lot of Africans doing branding.
Okay.
We were when we started 11 years ago and talked about cross-cultural branding. Nobody understood what even branding was and how important it is. Today, you see some people talking about branding, but especially when it comes from an African woman, like you said, right?
Yes.
And not just African, but a woman as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it's a full show for that. Really, it's difficult, but I've been able to overcome it for the last 11 years.
Okay.
I'm quite mission driven. Not a lot of things faze me, to be honest with you.
All right.
And it's important because the mission is greater than the challenges for me.
Oh, right.
We need to change the image of the continent, and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Right.
I think it's a game changer for the continent.
Definitely.
And we can do a lot of great things for the continent as the diaspora.
Yeah, definitely, because I believe that those prepared to take advantage of that opportunity are the ones who are definitely going to benefit from it. And
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things that most, I guess, people in business always talk about is the importance of building a team, having the right team around you in order to make your business a success. Explain a little bit to those who don't see the value of having a PR firm as part of their team, or try to sell, I guess, that portion of need to have the Abrabrand around your company. For our viewers and listeners, please.
Yes, definitely. I mean, in terms of the business, if you want to, penetrate a market, an African market or an African diaspora market, you do need to have a company that has expertise in it, which is us. That's part. Second, in terms of, we specialize in terms of understanding the customer needs and the market trends, and we have a very good expertise in terms of global trends as well. What products don't work, what in terms of your messaging, what won't work. We're susceptible to culture. We understand the subtleties of cultures, the multicultural, and we're a multicultural company as well. So we speak about 6 languages in total, and I do have a team. We have a technology division, so we have someone dedicated and a team dedicated to the technology services as well that we offer, because today when you do branding, you need to be technology driven.
Yes.
You need to have what they call digital footprint.
Right.
So that's your online presence, and your online presence you need to do. It's quite tedious work, and you need to do it consistently. So in terms of be it small, so a leader for us, branding is it's a leader, an entrepreneur, a one-man show or one-woman show that is looking to brand themselves in a sense that to do consistent messaging and acquire customers, followers, and so on and so forth. The businesses, small businesses, minority-owned businesses especially, because those are the ones that are suffering. And also minority businesses are those that they're SMEs, they usually employ less than 10 people. And they could easily penetrate the African market because they have similarities in terms of how to manage their business as a small business. So there are certain aspects of it. So they need to hire a company like Abrabrand to facilitate their market entry into the continent. Then the larger corporation for the CSR, one of the main things is we are very much involved in the US Chamber of Commerce, and they have a CSR report annually. Because we are very well informed, we have a knowledge depository, as they say, and that business intelligence allows us to provide a very refined program design and development, and even sometimes management of those programs that are for CSR. So impact driven and measurable that they need to do, be it here when it comes to the diaspora or on the continent. And then for the countries, it goes without saying that 21st century, African countries need to brand their countries, and it's multi-layered, and it needs to be implemented in phases. So it's not like any other PR firm where they with all due respect, but it's not that they just send interns to do little work and then they invoice them an exorbitant amount of money. For us, it's mission driven. We have a stake in making Africa a new version of Africa being deployed across the world.
All right. So there's a mission, there is passion, there's mission driven. So in other words, there is a bigger stake on their end. This is Abrabrand, and she is Rahel, the head of this organization. Rahel, thank you for joining us on the Diaspora Central Spotlight. We will have you back on this show, and we'll probably even create a spot for you on a quarterly basis so that you can wake up our audience and make this diaspora great. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you very much for having me.
Indeed. Is there anything?
You're great.
Okay. Is there? Can you give us your social media information, your website, and any information that our users and viewers can actually use to get access to you?
Sure. So Abrabrand is ABRABRAND.com. On our social media is the same thing, at Abrabrand across the board, and at Afrolahar. Afro, AFROLEHAR. So you can find us on all social media with those two handles.
All right, and there you have it. And as I always like to end situations or shows such as this, remember, if we don't do it for ourselves, who will? Until next time, you take care of yourselves and each other.